千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. As always, I want to extend my welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we are ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. This graph has a couple of scales, like a X and Y axes, starting with the horizontal scale. The horizontal scale is easy to understand. On the left, you see non-stop noise, noisy. And then on the very right, you see no words, silence, quietude. In between, you've got the various grades, the steps. So next to non-stop noise, you've got many words, not quite non-stop, but many. And then next to no words, you've got few words. Those are the people who are terse, who pick and choose what they say carefully, so they don't talk too much. And then in the middle, some words, and perhaps most of us will fit into that category, that sometimes we're quiet, sometimes we're talkative. So most of us may cluster around the middle. Now, let me also show the vertical scale, the y-axis. So as you can see, this is the axis that has to do with meaning. At the top, meaningful, full of meaning. At the bottom, meaningless, devoid of meaning. Then, just as it is with the x-axis, in the y-axis, we have 5 steps. Next to meaningful, much meaning. And then one step above meaningless is little meaning. In between, some meaning. So meaning rather than words. Now we know the two are independent of one another because they form this space, but we have experienced times when very little is being said, but much meaning is expressed. So the space that they form between them can be expressed like this. So when you think about something that is in the upper right-hand quadrant, in personal interactions, sometimes even just a look, a glance, a touch, no words at all, and yet much meaning is being conveyed. That's on the upper right-hand side. And we have also experienced the opposite. Perhaps a slick politician who talks a lot, uses many words, but then ends up expressing little and promising nothing. So what would that be? Well, that would be more toward the lower left-hand quadrant. Many words, but little or no meaning. And we can also think about the other quadrants and find examples. For instance, when we take a look at the upper left-hand quadrants, many words, a lot of meaning, we see examples of that in situations like school, where a teacher has to utilize many words to convey knowledge to the students. So the knowledge is the meaning being conveyed, but there has to be quite a few words being utilized for that purpose. Or if you think in terms of objects, if you think about like an encyclopedia, no question about it, it's a collection of many words, but it is also the distillation of human knowledge, and therefore it would also belong in the upper left-hand quadrant. So what about the opposite? What about things that have no words but convey not a whole lot of meaning? Well, typically inanimate objects, maybe just a rock, a pebble, well, it's completely silent. It doesn't express a whole lot of meaning. It's just that. It's just the object itself. So we know the two axes are independent of one another. Then we want to talk about where the Tao fits into all of this. Multiple times in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu talks about how the Tao is silent. It cannot be heard. Nature itself, it does its work, it does everything, but it says nothing. The changing of seasons occur without fanfare, without the Tao or nature announcing the change. It just happens. Flowers bloom when the time is right. It doesn't need to make an announcement. It doesn't need to advertise. So at the very upper right-hand side, we've got the Tao that expresses all possible meanings using no words. And then I want to also talk about the Tao sages, the wise sages who wish to learn from the Tao or learn from nature. To them, it's the same thing. These wise sages get to a point where they don't talk that much, but what they do say tend to be very important. That is, they express a lot of meaning using fewer words. And when that is the case, people really tune in, people listen to them, people pay attention. Now, what about us? We're not at the level of the Tao masters. We're not at the level of the sages. We aspire to be that, but in our everyday lives, we sometimes speak quite a bit, and we may even be expressing things of meaning. We may even convey meaning to one another, but we know that there are also times when we find ourselves talking a lot, but not saying much. That is when we become more like the annoying people. For us, the best we can do oftentimes is to not fall into this category. And I think you know the kind of people I'm talking about. People who talk a lot, but they don't really have a whole lot to say. They don't have that much that is meaningful or worthwhile or valuable. So when they're done talking, you don't really need to retain what they have expressed because you know it isn't useful at all. Then I also have one last category here. Unwise doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is a relatively new expression. It's a word describing how people now are sometimes in a state that is, I would say, completely contrary to the Tao. Doom scrolling means you're spending a lot of time, wasting a lot of time scrolling through your phone, perhaps social media, perhaps the news. Doom scrolling because you're just endlessly looking at depressing news. about one disaster after another in the world, about problems, about issues. It's endless noise. It's making you depressed. It's all doom and gloom, but it's nothing useful or meaningful, nothing that you can act on. So this is actually the most contrary to the Tao. Then the question that I have for everyone is, where would you place yourself in this graph? Are you clustering around the middle? Are you taking steps to go a little bit further to the upper right-hand quadrant? Do you find yourself falling back to the lower left-hand side? The direction of spiritual cultivation is definitely to the upper right-hand side in this graph. So this is when we have to sort of examine ourselves. We have to review our daily actions, our interactions with other people, and ask questions like, have I talked too much but said too little that is meaningful? Too little that really matters to myself and other people? And do I know that? Do I know the meaning that I convey for a fact? What I mean is, sometimes we may think of what we say as being very meaningful, but perhaps that is because we don't know how other people are reacting to it. They may actually think the opposite. While we think what we say is meaningful, other people may actually react by thinking that the words that we have uttered don't mean a whole lot. So how certain are we that we are closer to the wise sages than the people who annoy others? Regardless of where you happen to be, I think we can agree that the direction we want to go is spiritual cultivation, where we can be much more careful in what we say, using fewer words, but conveying more that is meaningful or useful for other people. The summary for today is to be aligned with the Tao, starting with the realization that the Tao is inexhaustible. It is infinite. The more you use it, the more there is to use. Therefore, the more we cultivate, the more skillfully we can use more of it. Number two, cultivate humility. We can be more capable and humble at the same time, much like the Tao is able to do everything and says nothing. Number three, we can observe those who speak too much, and we see the truth in the words of Lao Tzu, that too many words hasten failure. We can observe the negative consequences that people who speak too much bring upon themselves, and we can learn from that. Speak less and do more. By watching what we say, we can find peace and contentment in the silence of the Tao. Oftentimes, we don't need to talk really all that much. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.